My parents, they just didn't have the best relationship. You know, my mom, she was a victim of domestic violence. Since we were living under my grandfather's roof, he was a sanitation worker, just flashes of memory, and then I remember my mom picking me up, and then I'm looking into his casket and his dead body's there. My father, he would always show me all the bodybuilding magazines, the Bruce Lee movies, the Rocky movies. It was a weird feeling, so I would try to find ways to do that through sports. But with these team sports, I found that I never really got that ability. Well, I was more benched oftentimes because I was still the smaller kid. I was pretty skinny, you know, 5'8", 5'9" at the time.
If you can think back to that young Will, what did he want?
He wanted a friend, I'd say.
2, 1.
Yeah, I was 16 years old. Yeah, I want to say 2013, 2014. Got my first pull-up bar, attached it to the door frame, and I remember trying to do one pull-up and I couldn't do the pull-up. I was able to get pretty far to the point where people were noticing the physical change in me. I remember the security guard saying, "Why is your body bigger than your head?" Because I'm still growing. I found the fort at a very interesting time where, because I was doing so much within the fitness space, I was kind of bleeding myself thin in terms of how much time I could invest in each place. What I was looking for, an environment where it didn't feel cutthroat. I didn't feel like I was just a fish trying to swim in the ocean and get clients and still not have guidance. And also a place where people actually cared about training. When I came in the fort, I was able to see through the outside in because I would see Eric make the post about the fort, and he was somebody who I highly regarded in the calisthenics scene through calisthenics competitions I had seen, that if he's at this place, it's because they're doing something different. And the first day I came through those doors, suit and tie, waiting for an interview, the first thing I'm asked is like, "Hey, you got workout clothes? Are you ready to train?" I'm like, "Wait, what?"
Now, do you fit in?
Born and raised in the Bronx, July 25th, 1997. That's where it all started. Where I'm situated at in the Bronx, it would probably be further up northeast, as far as a bus ride or a train ride, maybe 30, 40 minutes. And then if I were to drive on a good day, maybe 15 minutes. With New York City traffic, more like 50 minutes.
Did your family have close relationships with the people around that you lived with?
Yeah, I would say around the time that I was born up to when I was 14 years old, our family was very close, especially since we were living under my grandfather's roof. He, from what I recall, he took care of both myself, my mom, my biological father, my aunt, my sister, my father's sister, his other 2 kids that he had. So he really tried to kind of foster a nest for us within that home that he was trying to pay off. And his end goal really with his life was to try to leave that for us to have, for all of us to get a piece of that, so he could have something to leave for the future generations after he passed. He was a sanitation worker, and my mother has a very good description of how to describe him. She likes to call him the difunto. So for reference, what that kind of entails is somebody who gives so much of himself to people. So that's really the type of individual that he was painted as for me growing up.
Did you know him?
I did know him. Yeah, I did know him, and I remember him. And a few of the memories I have of him, one key memory that comes to mind is I probably was maybe around 3 years old, and then I just remember sitting on his lap, and we were watching some telenovela. I'm sure both of my parents were at work, and he was just looking after me. And then I would just kind of remember him singing his salsa songs, and just kind of very just laxed. And then as far as like the very last vivid memory was actually on his deathbed. And he passed away when I was around 6 years old from stage 4 lung cancer. And I remember seeing him, and I remember him hugging me and my uncles. And I was very unsure of what was going on, but at the time, just seeing him in the hospital bed, it was very telling that, it wasn't something good. And then just flashes of memory, and then I remember my mom picking me up, and then I'm looking into his casket and his dead body's there. So, what I remember him are nothing but fond memories in terms of stories that were told of the person that I didn't really know well. The majority of them were nothing but good things.
Do you think any of his spirit lives through you?
Oh, 100%. What I embody on a day-to-day is just the willingness to serve people and to be giving. That's the one thing that just kind of from stories and from the vague recollection that I have of him and everything that he's kind of instilled in me, as well as like the rest of my family members. That's something that I try to embody on a day-to-day. It was a pretty good time for the early phases of my childhood. And there were pockets that I remember, a lot of good stuff that I do remember. Remember going to Sesame Land with my mom up in, I think, in Philadelphia. And I also remember having birthday parties with my cousins and, having great times with them. And then fast forward a little bit, my parents, they just didn't have the best relationship. My mom, she was a victim of domestic violence. Yeah. And it's not my story to tell for her because I only know so much. It's also not my story to tell of him because I can't really speak for him in terms of why he did, what influenced him. But the best I could say in terms of when I look back at it now is, they were both two individuals. They met, they fell in love. I came about and, one thing led to another and, just things didn't work out. That's kind of the way I look at it. I don't like to look at it in a dark light because when I do look at it that way, it makes me feel feelings of resentment towards my father. I didn't view him as a bad person. He never really did anything bad to me.
If you can think back to like that time, a kid, that young Will, like what did he want?
He wanted a friend, I'd say. Somebody that he could talk to about his problems. Somebody who could understand how he was feeling. Because at the time, as much as both of my parents loved me in the own way that they did, I think their judgment was clouded so much with the agenda of looking after me.
How, like when you're traveling, you're in new environments every like 3 or 4 months, like, how did you try to, find that, or how did you try to assimilate into those environments?
The best thing that I tried to do was to find people that I could find common ground with in terms of mutual interests. Anybody who enjoyed watching cartoons on Cartoon Network or watch anime like Dragon Ball Z, Naruto, Bleach, things like that at the time that were becoming very popular. Or even people who enjoyed drawing as much as I did, because early on I met somebody that my mom used to work with that he used to do these sketches of Dragon Ball, and I would see him do these sketches super fast but super detailed. So I developed that inclination towards that pretty early on, and I would just sketch. Yeah.
Tell me more about the role of those stories in your life at that time.
Yeah, it very much depends on what period. I would say a little early on, it was definitely Dragon Ball that started it all. Something about being able to overcome the insurmountable for me is really what stood out. I oftentimes, because I was always just all over the place, it felt like I would never have a breakthrough. I would never find a sense of solace. But then seeing the varying characters in the show and their character development of how they were able to transcend evil, how they were able to ascend further and beyond their base power levels and always find ways to level up and continue the path forward. Something about that just really kind of showed me, like, hey, this is where you're at now, but as long as you keep your head leveled and you just kind of chip away with whatever you can, whenever you can, you'll find a better way out.
Tell me about like moving back to the DR and like fast forwarding a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
What was that like for you?
It was definitely a culture shock for me moving to Dominican Republic. I was 12 turning 13 years old at that time. I was able to, fortunately enough, finish the 7th grade here in the States. My mom left me with a mutual friend of hers. I stood with them for 4 months to finish it out. And my mom, my stepdad, and my brother, they went out there just to get things situated and find a home while they were over there. And I was just over here doing my thing. And then when I got over there, everything looked pretty cool. And if you know anything about hearing Dominicans speak, they speak so fast that you can't pick up certain words or certain sounds. So then on top of that, even though we lived in a private community, anytime we stepped out of that community, just for me to go to the private school that I was at, you would see a lot of the stuff going on with people lighting up tires on the main street because the political climate at the time was very rough. The cops are also very corrupted. They often get bribed so people could get away with bad things. Things were very difficult, especially with my mom not having immediate family to help out. My stepdad also kind of struggling with being able to maintain steady work with a lot of the odd and things that he was doing, from me working at a bookstore to then, working as a security guard, working with like Dish Network and fiber optics at the time that was rampant in the mid 2000s to late 2000s. So that's when we made the decision. It's like, yeah, we gotta try to come back to the States.
So how did you find your physicality once you were back?
Yeah, so, as far as my physicality goes, I was always a small kid growing up. I was like the smallest of a lot of my immediate family members growing up. I was also one of the smaller kids from 1st grade all the way to 7th grade. And then I was finally able to hit a little bit of a growth spurt from middle school into high school. But even with that said, I never really got an opportunity to try and express my athletic capability. And the reason why for me that held such merit is because growing up, my father was in great shape. My uncles, one of them, triathlete, swimmer, did all these cool things. The other one's more of a bodybuilder. My stepfather, also fantastic shape, more of the bodybuilder side. So I've always been surrounded by these men who were extremely capable. And I looked up to these men who were extremely capable. And even at an early age, my father, he would always play the Pumping Iron movies. He would show me all the bodybuilding magazines from Men's Health and Muscle and Fitness, and even the Bruce Lee movies, the Rocky movies. So being that I couldn't really express my physicality or even knew what that truly was, it was a weird feeling. So I would try to find ways to do that through sports. In middle school and high school, I tried to play basketball with people. I would try to do flag football. But with these team sports, I found that I never really got that ability, that innate ability to showcase what I can do or the potential of what I had to do, because everybody's mentality was to win, rightfully so. But because of that, I never really got the ball much in my hands. When I played flag football, I was more benched oftentimes because I was still the like smaller kid. I was pretty skinny, 5'8", 5'9" at the time, weighing around 130 pounds, soaking wet. So I was fast. I could move pretty well, all things considered, but couldn't really take a hit or, grind a little bit. So that's where the opportunity to kind of find my path came about. So I told myself by the time I was in my junior year, I was like, I gotta find a way to grow or get stronger. So I asked my aunt for a pull-up bar on Christmas of that year. I think that was 2013, 2014. And yeah, I was 16 years old. Yeah, I want to say 2013, 2014. And yeah, I got my first pull-up bar, attached it to the door frame, and I remember trying to do one pull-up and I couldn't do the pull-up. And I was like, oh no, we can't do this. And that's kind of where it all started. It started with the pull-up bar, and then that eventually segued into me getting the opportunity to sign up for weight training, because you could choose what activity you wanted to do for PT in school. And I opted out for weight training because almost nobody signed up for it. And anybody who did sign up for it, they just did it because they wanted the passing credit. But for me, my thing was, I want to use more tools. I can't fit a bunch of weights at home. So let me see if I could use this old rugged weight room in my high school and make something of it. I was able to get pretty far, to the point where people were noticing the physical change in me. I remember the security guard saying, why is your body bigger than your head? Because I'm still growing. But then it was to where, like, I guess my head was small and then I was growing exponentially up top. So it was funny. That's kind of how it flowed, especially too, since I didn't really start heavy lower body training until my senior year, because at the time the stigma was, if you weight train, it's going to stunt your growth. And then I ended up looking up some research where it said, yeah, as long as you don't compress your spine, you'll be fine. So in my mind, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm gonna just do a bunch of upper body and like high reps for my legs. And that's what I did for the better half of 4 months. And that's how my physique kind of evolved. It gave me a sense of purpose, because people started asking me, hey, how did you make all this progress? What did you do for this muscle, that muscle? And I just started answering questions and helping people, and then seeing people do the things that I would tell them and applying it, and then seeing them get stronger and get them see like physical changes within their bodies. So it was cool. It gave me a way to relate to people that I never really had. Usually in the past, it was just try to find common ground. Now it's where I'm relating to people because I'm trying to help them solve a problem. When I first got into personal training, I didn't really have the guidance that I needed to learn how to run the floor, prospect, and be able to sell and get clients. So it was just a lot of me kind of taking notes of people and how they flowed with it, that I eventually was able to fill my book up and do the bare minimum just to make sure that I could still buy lunch, pay for my metro fare, buy my textbooks, and, keep afloat. I found the Ford at a very interesting time where, because I was doing so much within the fitness space, I was kind of bleeding myself thin in terms of how much time I could invest in each place. So I needed to find something that was stable, but also too what I was looking for, especially post COVID, was an environment where it didn't feel cutthroat. I didn't feel like I was just a fish trying to swim in the ocean and get clients and still not have guidance. And also a place where people actually cared about training. What I was finding often in a lot of other gyms that I was at, and even too with people that I had worked with, it was very much a round robin system. Get people in and then see what we can do and then rotate the people that left. And being that that's what the kind of mantra was, I didn't want to be in an environment where it was just all about sell, sell, sell. I wanted to be in an environment where I could actually showcase the real reason why training matters. And I can have meaningful impact on people. And I can apply the knowledge that I've gained over, at the time, 5 years that I had been coaching, to then be able to fester that into something more. And when I came in the fort, I was able to see through the outside in, because I would see Eric make the post about the fort, and he was somebody who I highly regarded in the calisthenics scene through calisthenics competitions I had seen, that if he's at this place, it's because they're doing something different. And the first day I came through those doors, suit and tie, waiting for an interview, the first thing I'm asked is like, hey, you got workout clothes? Are you ready to train? I'm like, wait, what? So it took me for a loop. I was just like, damn, y'all want me to hop in a workout right now? But yeah, that's kind of where it all started. Just off day one, it was just like, yeah, this is what we do.
Did you feel like you fit in that environment?
At first, I would say no, because I had to find my groove. I had to see what it was within everything that y'all were doing that I could bring something different. Because something that I noticed early on within the whole team is everybody had something that they were really, really good at and that they excelled at. And for me, I was in a way a jack of all trades, but I did bias a little bit more of the strength stuff. So for me, at first, it was trying to see where I could showcase my true skill set. And that quickly got highlighted once we were implementing weighted calisthenics and doing the numbers that I was doing on the weighted pull-ups. It was very interesting to see that I was very far ahead of a lot of people. And
this is something you compete at a very high level now.
yeah, but it's funny too, because when I started off with the fort, that sport was in its infancy. It wasn't something that was as streamlined as it is today. It was something that you had sets and reps, calisthenics competitions, a lot of the stuff that Eric was into for well over a decade. But then that wasn't my thing, because I just didn't like the politics with the inconsistency of the reps. And then I just decided, I'm just going to keep training these calisthenics movements heavy because I like it. And then lo and behold, I see videos of people overseas doing 100-kilogram pull-ups, 150-kilogram dips, and these crazy feats of strength, 50-kilogram muscle-ups. I'm like, what the hell is this? And then I'm like, if this sport can come to the States, I'm in that. And then 3 years ago, it came to the States. I'm like, I got to make this happen.
Yeah, and I watched your posts consistently with your, particularly the weighted dips. That was like a battle for you. There was a number that you were gonna hit. You were set, you were focused on it, and you eventually hit it.
Yeah.
What was that number?
100 kilos, but it's
100 kilo weighted.
Yeah, and that's weight attached to me. And the thing about that number is there's so much sacrifice that goes into that, because my body has gone through so much overuse, so many strains. At this point in my fitness career, I've had 3 strains on my left, 2 strains on my right pec, overuse in both elbows, my shoulder on both sides, jacked up from period to period over the course of the 5 years that I've been prioritizing it. And even now where I'm at, it's still a weak link, but it's been a battle of having the balance of being able to excel at that movement, but still be able to do what I need to do here and not bleed myself thin. You can't do that alone. You need a team of people who have a similar vision and a similar frame of thinking to be able to create something that's more. Because I know people personally, they have millions of followers across multiple platforms, and they're able to help a subset of individuals. However, I want to be able to do something a little bit more, but I won't be able to do that alone. So being able to have that environment here at the fort, I think that we'll be able to do that and a lot more.
Now, do you fit in?
Yeah, I would say so. Definitely.